So we've established a completely randomized design. Let's look at another type of experiment design called a blocking method. And in a blocking method, you recognize that there's a characteristic that could confound your results. So you decide to go ahead and split it up based on that characteristic to start with. Here are just some examples. Maybe you think that boys and girls are going to behave differently, not behave, but they're going to react differently to the tea tree oil. Maybe that doesn't seem so great to you. Maybe left-handed versus right-handed. That seems a little far-fetched. Maybe younger people versus older people. Maybe not so far-fetched. Maybe younger people, their brains are actively growing, or so there's something to it that their brains are different. So maybe concussion-only patients versus concussion plus other injuries. Maybe somebody who was in a sports accident had just got a bumped head versus somebody who was in a car accident who had a bumped head and lots of stitches in other places and broken bones, and so they may react very different. Maybe healthy people versus underlying health conditions that people have. You might separate that, and that's called blocking. You intentionally break up the 40 volunteers into these categories. You hope to have somewhat equal sizes, but it's not required. And you can imagine it would be very hard to find 40 volunteers where you got exactly 20 that are mostly healthy and 20 that have underlying health conditions. So anyway, you still get these 40 volunteers, but you split them up into these groups so you can control for these underlying factors. Now you're basically going to almost like do a separate experiment for each one of these, and then you're going to compare those results for those. And so you're going to tea tree oil for this group and a placebo group for the healthy people. For the underlying health conditions, half of them are going to be randomly assigned to the tea tree oil and the other half are going to get the placebo. All right, and then at the end you're going to compare those results, and then you might also compare them finally all together. So I'm not sure what that extra piece was for, but I'm going to compare some results here, going to compare some results here, and then at the end compare the results. And one of the key things is that you are not randomly assigning anymore here. You're specifically assigning based on those two conditions. But you are randomly assigning there, and you're randomly assigning here. So we're still going through that process of taking those subgroups and writing their names on a piece of paper, identical size pieces of paper, mixing them thoroughly and pulling out the top half to go into one group and the other half goes in the other group. So that's called blocking. It's very similar to stratified, a grouping method used in random selection for surveys, but this is in an experimental term called blocking. A very specific type of blocking is called matched pair, where you maybe have a set of twins and you want to do a before, one twin versus the other, so you match them up together, and that is a very specific type of block. So I just want to mention that at the end here.